and we wanted to help folks understand that a little bit, at least from your guys' perspective. So, Cyrus, what was that? I know that I picked varied people on purpose. So tell us a little bit about what that process was like for you.
We decided to do IP because people kept hitting us on the head, telling us we should do IP. So it wasn't totally a decision. Like we're all pretty young in college, and again, the ski industry is so similar that we thought, not that Tesla was at this stage yet, but we thought we could out Tesla people in the sense of just like working faster and harder than somebody else. The problem is that we weren't a single, not like a novel. We weren't the next snowboard. We weren't so different that like looking at alone was going to differentiate ourselves right off the bat. So essentially, we had a lot of advisors, just people that would walk through our shop and say, "Have you guys patented this yet?" And like people asked us again and again and again, and it kind of came to the point where it was very clear that what we were doing, the entire background, like the spine and the spinal cord and any part of the brain, was done with the IP side of things. So it, even though I didn't have, like honestly, I didn't have a lot of faith in it. I just thought it was going to be this, almost just to appease people from like stop asking us questions and whatnot. And our school actually paid for the first application was like $200 just to file it. And I think, no, I know, I wrote in the back of a piece of paper like this, and it's literally handwritten. So it's before KEEGAN had hands on it, by the way, obviously. So. Yeah, it was like super early stage, and we did it more because we didn't know what else to do. A lot of people were just telling us we should do it, and then we finally realized that this was like the only differentiating factor because we started marketing / just telling people about our skis because they were like engineered. Everybody engineers their skis, right? What Renoun doesn't have an engineer on staff? Like of course they do. They've got tons. So we realized very quickly that like just out engineering a ski just really wasn't going to happen. And there was zero reason why they shouldn't just buy our ski full price, pay us $1,000 for it, and then cut it in half, see what's inside, and reverse engineer it in about 3 days. So as soon as that was the case, we filed the patent, and it's like I said, it was a long road. It took us, I don't know the exact number, but it's almost 5 years to go from the time when I first filed that handwritten piece to the government. And it was a lot of ups and turns certainly, but that piece of it, I think I'll refrain. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but yeah. So yeah, it was pretty early stage. And I think for us, like we realized that it was going to be an instrumental part of the company going forward. And then it turned out to be a really smart idea. And we've now, since like I said before, we've branched out into a lot of sporting equipment, and it's all branching. It's not all leveraging the same patent, but it's certainly inspired by that. And it, back to the old picket fence idea that it's. It was the first stake in the ground, certainly, for something like that just puts us in a much better position going forward.
Sure. And Jay, you already mentioned how it was a number of years before you started to think about IP with Rapid, the company that was just recently acquired. What was it that prompted you to get into IP at that point? I mean, you had so many years of going. You didn't need to spend a bunch of capital on IP. What was it that changed your mind? Why did you end up looking into that, and how did that start? How did that process get started for you?
Well, we recognized that we had something unique, and that again we didn't want somebody to copy it. So we also thought maybe we can monetize this because it was a software. So if we put a little money into it, we could sell it to other, I don't want to say competitors, but we did sheet metal machining. Maybe somebody in injection molding in another space might want to buy that as a product from us. So protecting ourselves, I guess, offensively and looking at it as a business opportunity. I do want to, because it's not sort of on your question list, but
okay.
One of the approaches we took in how we established the framework for the IP holding is different than I've heard elsewhere. And I'm an entrepreneur. I knew at some point I would be exiting Rapid, and I wanted to try and patent a bunch of ideas. I was not VC funded, it was all bank funding. So I created a separate entity where I put all the IP, and I put that in a state where there were no business taxes. So what that allowed me to do, and it was quite successful when we did exit Rapid, is only the IP that was relevant to the ongoing operations of Rapid went along with the transaction, and I still have a IP company that holds the bulk of the patent applications that we put forth. So that was very successful for myself, as well as there were some other business advantages to doing so.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for touching on that. Yeah. Karl, your experience is you're coming at this from a little bit different perspective. Where I know that you do a lot of work with people in biotech, and you have a lot of experience in biotech, and patents is the whole game. Sometimes software. When do we get into this? Do we really need to get into this? But biotech, it's like a gating issue. You're not even going to leave. You're not going to leave the starting line without something in hand, right? So
Yes.
But maybe you could just touch on what that process is like, especially since you're always dealing with tech transfer offices.
Yeah, I think it's partly different because of the industry, and it's also partly different because of kind of the network in which I'm swimming in, which is primarily, as you mentioned, spinning out startups from universities. Not all the time, but more so than not. And usually that spin out is the spin out of the IP, not just the personnel. And so quite often, whether the patent has already been filed or not, maybe it's more so that they're thinking of filing the patent by the time I come in and get involved. And I'm usually in parallel just working with the TLO patents law firm to make sure that goes along appropriately. Or it's building a patent portfolio. You have your core seminal patents, and you know that particularly in biotech, you need more than one sometimes, and so it's out shopping for the right other type of patent assets that you might need. And so in that respect, that's certainly much more of looking for the patent strategy before building the business plan. But then when you're looking at medical devices, it may very well be more building the business plan, identifying what your market is, figuring out what are the gaps in the current product offering, and then going after that. And that's where it's more in line of, okay, we'll figure out the patent strategy as we go along. So I've seen both, I've funded both, but in both cases, it's the strategy. You might not have the patent, you might have the patent, but it's the strategy. Thinking up further enough ahead of time of what you're going to need, and putting that into your business plan so that when you're pitching the venture capitalist, you're saying, yeah, we don't have the patent, but we have the IP. Right now, it's pre-patent. Right now, we think this is what it's going to be, but we have a strategy for getting there.
Thanks, Karl. And Tom, what has the strategy been at Beta? And you guys have a very unique situation, which I'll let you explain as much as you want to about that, I guess.
Sure. So with regard to IP, sort of the question being, when did you decide you needed a patent? Similar to Cyrus, it was we were kind of pushed into that realm pretty quickly, right? Because we had a discussion with a client where they had an interest in, because this is an emerging field, and because they wanted to work with a startup like ours that was moving at the speed of a startup, as opposed to the speed of a large aerospace company. Their goal was to help accelerate our business, and so because they really wanted this technology, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, to support their business, and they had no interest in the technology outside of their business, they're interested in funding us and making it clear that we own all the IP that we develop on their behalf. So they're a pharmaceutical company, so they're very well versed in IP, and their particular strategy was, if we're going to fund you to build this, we want to award you the IP rights to the technology that you build, essentially on their dime, to help accelerate your business. And so, and what does that help us to do? It helps us to go talk to investors about what the value of our company is when you're trying to start a company up in Burlington, Vermont, as opposed to Silicon Valley. As you might imagine, the investment community is just a little bit smaller and just a little bit less, well, they're a little bit more risk averse, let's just say. And so it's different, right? So having a sensible IP strategy really makes sense. And then to add to that fact, one of the folks that we recruited into the company, who was the founder of a company that has a flight simulation software and also has a piece of avionics software, the core code of which we intended to leverage to create flight algorithms, avionics. He had actually been sued by a patent troll. And so in order to get him into the company, we had to sort of wade through all of his history and baggage about our IP. We just had to come up to speed very quickly, and we weren't really, we couldn't do that on our own. It was just, it would have been foolish for us to just sort of wade through that. We're not, by any stretch, experts on those things. So in order to negotiate that on multiple fronts, and that really, tying all those things up, really put us in a position to take a forward-leaning view towards securing whatever IP we possibly can around our space. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of different angles to it.
Yeah, that was a new one for me, and it's been exciting to watch all these kind of different things unfold. So